If I somehow manage to get a signal, send help. We're hopelessly lost. I've tried outgoing calls hundreds of times, but they never go through. I'm not sure how long we've been gone. The date on my phone, it makes no sense. GPS isn't working and our maps don't align. I'm not sure how long we've been driving, or how much longer I can keep this up. Search and rescue should have come looking for us a long time ago. Our family would have sent for help by now. There is no dirt road that goes on this long without signs of life. Something is wrong. Very wrong. Update. I've documented our trip in detail. If we don't find our way home, I hope someone reads our story. July 7th. My friend Travis and I left to go camping. We left in the wee hours of the morning when it was still dark. Travis slept and I drove along the pitch-black highway as we descended into the mountains. Eventually, the radio turned to static, so I turned it off. We'd planned a trip in the Rocky Mountain National Park, but a road was shut down and we got all turned around and upside down. So we just kept driving. I remember seeing a sign for Sawtooth Mountain, but that was quite a ways back. Even if no one sees this, I need to sort it out in my head. We drove in the dark, slowly along the dirt roads, looking for a good place to hike around and set up camp. We spotted a small trail inlet with a camping permitted sign, so we pulled over, parked our car, marked our spot with GPS, and grabbed our camp supplies. We hiked for a few hours or so, until we reached a secluded area in the woods near a small lake. We spent the afternoon setting up camp and gathering firewood and hiking around a bit to become familiar with our surroundings. The day passed quickly, and as dusk descended on us, Travis and I watched the sunset, sitting around the fire, and passed a bottle of Buffalo Trace back and forth. The moon was completely full that night, and shining across the lake. Only a few clouds in the sky, and there were so many stars out, the sky looked almost fake. It was the kind of quiet you'd never get in the city, no matter the hour. We hadn't seen nor heard anyone come or go from our camp area all evening, or on the trail hiking, for that matter. As the night went on, we heard a strange distant noise that night that immediately set us on high alert. It sounded like someone clearing their throat through static on an old radio, but in a chittering noise that an animal would make. We both looked at each other. What the fuck is that? It made us both woozy and changed the mood immediately. The noise in the distance quieted down.
Maybe we've had a little too much bourbon,
Travis told me with an uneasy look. We calmed down and forgot about the noise. We decided to get some rest. We eventually dozed off, but I'm not too sure I truly ever fell asleep. I kept waking up with images of dark figures watching from the woods. July 8th. I woke up to Travis yelling outside the tent.
John, get out here.
I could tell something was wrong by the tone in his voice. I climbed out of the tent and saw Travis standing there, looking up into the trees. I followed his gaze and saw our packs hanging on the tree branches, about 40 feet in the air. What the fuck could have done that? We stared at each other, uneasy and frightened. Something wasn't right. But the prospect of someone doing this while we were passed out didn't make any sense. And how would someone even do that? It would have made a lot of noise. Noise I would have heard while lying there half asleep. Had I fallen into a deeper sleep than I thought? And what kind of animal could possibly do something like that? We spent all afternoon trying to get our things out of the trees, throwing rocks, attempting to climb. Neither of us was interested in another night in the forest. But by the time we knocked our packs free from the tree branches, it was already dusk, and we would still have a long hike out. We were too exhausted. We packed our things up and hiked our way back around the lake and towards the main trail. We came across a little site that was perfectly protected, nestled up against a rock wall surrounded by a few large pine trees. We tried to brush off the strangeness from the morning. I had a pounding headache and I thought perhaps dipping into the whiskey bottle would calm it. We broke out the snacks, realizing neither of us had eaten much. I still felt uneasy, but took small comfort in the fact that we had a gun and a camp axe. Night descended upon us once more, and we sat around the fire but spent most of it staring into the fire. Neither of us was much in the mood for conversation. Our moods had turned dark. I was stoking the fire with my cam stick I had been whittling on, and before I even looked up, something in the distance behind Travis's shoulder sent a chill down my spine. I froze. I saw something moving in the tree line along the lake. I squinted. The silhouette of a man, yet impossibly tall, looming in the darkest black I've ever seen. It didn't move like a man. It appeared in one place, then the next, peeking out from behind the tree trunks, then ducking back behind them. It got closer, maybe 50 yards away. Travis saw the expression change in my face and heard the rustling from behind him in the woods, and froze, then turned his head to look behind him. But it was gone. Whatever that was had vanished. I spoke quietly and frantically, trying to describe the truly awful, pulsing shadow of a man I had seen peeking at us from behind the large pine trees. I was shivering. I was watching for it, expecting it to appear before us at any second, and the feeling in the pit of my stomach, the feeling of pure dread, overwhelmed my entire body. My blood ran cold. I wanted to vomit. Travis saw the color drain out of my face.
Hand me my pack. I'll get the pistol out,
he whispered, trying not to show his fear. We called out into the forest, trying our best to frighten whatever was out there.
Who's out there? We're armed. Show yourself now or I'll shoot,
Travis called out. Dead silence, but I could feel its presence. Travis cocked his pistol and walked carefully towards where the man had stood.
If you're out there, show yourself now. I don't want to shoot you,
he called as he advanced out of our camp and into the tree line. I followed, shaken, but taking steps behind him carrying my camp axe. I was filled with a mixture of anger and terror, and I felt a strange sadness that overcame me. Travis froze. A tree rattled in the distance.
It fucking shimmied up the trees and vanished.
He stammered. I had seen it too. We bolted back to our camp.
I've never seen anything move that way.
That thing. It's like staring into a void, I said. We need to leave now. Where the fuck did it go? It's up there, watching us. We quickly packed as many of our things as we could, and then made our way to the trail. We didn't make it more than 5 minutes down the mountain before the strange chittering static noise in the distance broke the silence. We walked faster. Down the mountain trail. Ahead of us, a long looming shadow stood there, perfectly still in the moonlight. It didn't seem to have eyes, but I could feel it staring into us, like it was transmitting a signal of terror and hatred directly into my skull. My temples pulsed. We looked at each other and bolted the opposite way of it, up the mountain trail. It didn't chase. Suddenly, it was gone again. We stopped, out of breath. I knew I should have never let myself get so out of shape. Travis was hurting too. We stopped to catch our breath. And then after a few minutes, we heard a branch crack in the distance behind us. We both looked at each other, and without saying a word, we knew it was time to move. As we continued further up the mountain trail, we knew at some point we had to double back. We were headed up, when we needed to make our way down the mountain and to our car. I didn't care about the gear we'd left behind. I turned around to consider our position. Travis stood in the middle of the trail, his mouth wide open. He pointed to the top of a nearby tree. Standing on a branch towards the top of the 150-foot tree was an impossibly long shadow of a man. The edges of the shadow were blurry, buzzing, almost like static. It hurt my eyes. The weight of the branch couldn't support anything of that size. It didn't make any sense. We stared back at it, frozen, unable to comprehend it, or what to do next. I was tired of running. I took the camp axe out of my pack. After standing perfectly still, it suddenly moved from one treetop to another, so quickly that it almost appeared to teleport. The trees were shaking a bit. It was now hovering right above us in the tree to our right. It made that awful chittering static noise. Suddenly, the noise began to come from the trees in all directions. It wasn't alone. We were surrounded, with shadows standing among the treetops looking down on us. They pulsed and shifted into various shapes. My head pounded from looking at them directly. One smaller figure was perched on all fours, lowered to the ground, right in front of us. It looked like a giant black wolf. Trapped, we turned to bolt further up the small mountain trail. One side, a drop-off with trees, and the other side, mountain wall, and ran maybe 150 feet around the bend. Around that curve, the trail abruptly ended ahead of us. The shadows descended upon us, a sharp cliff overlooking the entire valley below. As we turned around, the sinister pulsing, vibrating shadows of various sizes stood there on the trail, and in the trees, perfectly still, blocking our only way out. And then the noise began again. It was almost like they were chanting while someone turned the dial on an old radio. My entire head felt like it was going to explode. It was as if they were able to implant all of the most horrible thoughts and feelings I'd ever had, all into my head, all at once. Feelings of self-loathing, hatred, loneliness, despair, anger. I wanted to throw myself off the edge of the cliff so badly. I could feel their intention. They wanted to witness our deaths. I turned and walked to the cliff's edge, looking down at the panoramic view below. I spotted the trailhead entrance hundreds of feet below, and far off in the distance, Travis was right behind me. He shouted,
"Jonathan, fight it. You're my best friend. You have a family."
It broke me free from the barrage of terrible thoughts, and I stopped myself from doing a swan dive over. Travis stood there with a look of pure sadness on his face. I had a flash vision in my brain of Travis suddenly pulling out his gun, putting it to his temple, pulling the trigger, then falling backward off the cliff. I shoved him hard, away from the cliff's edge. The gun. The figures remained staring at us, unmoved. Their noise suddenly stopped. They didn't have mouths, but you could picture their horrible, twisting expressions, the hatred in their absent eyes. Pure darkness. Travis snapped out of his trance, grabbed the gun from his waist, flipped the safety and fired several rounds directly at the perfectly still creatures. They didn't move. Not for at least a minute. They stayed perfectly still, pulsing, like they were staring into our souls. Then, almost all at once, they vanished, tree branches cracking around us. Stunned, we immediately began our descent back down the mountain. As I passed through where the figure stood, my body ran cold, like I was running through an ice cavern. We slowed our pace, out of breath, and from the corners of our eyes, began to notice shadowy figures of all shapes and sizes, twisting and bending, and pulsing in the trees around us. I tried to ignore them, to pretend they weren't there. They were jumping from tree to tree, static and chittering, and clicking, and that low, guttural, throat-clearing static noise. But now, it almost sounded excited, like they were celebrating. The noise grew louder and more intense, and once again, that sadness and anger and frustration washed over my entire body. I had to fight it. We ran down the trail for what felt like hours, occasionally stopping to hyperventilate. The shadow creatures had long disappeared, but the woods somehow looked stranger. Everything was a blur, and nothing seemed real. Almost like a very vivid painting. I could hear the faint static noise from behind us in the distance, through the trees. I saw the trailhead entrance before us. We'd finally reached it. I looked up, hundreds of feet above, I saw the cliff edge we had stood in the standoff hours before. We fucking made it. We beat you, I thought. Suddenly, I felt woozy again. I looked at Travis, who looked as if he was trying to scream, but couldn't. I froze. I saw pulsing, shadow-like versions of our lifeless bodies, splattered on the jagged edge of the rocks to the left of the trail below the cliff. Organs leaking, and brain matter dripping across the rocks. We broke free from the horrible visions and ran out of the entrance of the trail. We felt victory as we saw the car, hopped in it, and hightailed it out of there. That feels so long ago. And I'm so tired. So very tired. We've been looking for a paved road to signal that we've made it out. Or even a mountain house, a car, any signs of life. But it feels like we're driving in circles, over and over again. How long have we been driving? I turned on the radio. But you guessed it. Static. I have no idea how this phone is still on. I haven't heard a word out of Travis since we escaped the mountain. Come to think of it, he hasn't spoken since. Since right before I had that terrible vision of him killing himself. I hope someone sees this. Please, send help.